Morning to all of you. Welcome back to the Namaste Experience. It is Tuesday, and today we're going to have a different kind of a session. When you were young and your parents, before you could read, would sit next to you on the bed as you were beginning to fall asleep, and they would read a story. Or maybe you have children or grandchildren that you've been doing the same with. There's nothing more beautiful than someone sitting next to us reading a story and initiating a movement within us, allowing something to take hold, a teaching, a story, whatever it is that helps us to understand who we are and why we are here even better. So I want to read a little bit to you today. And in fact, this is from one of the very first metaphysical books I ever read, probably when I was 22, 23. I remember how I came into this level of teaching. I had graduated from a Catholic university, a Jesuit university in Chicago. And I met Linda, who later became my wife, and she was the one who was really into metaphysics. She introduced me to unity. The first book she ever encouraged me to read was Autobiography of a Yogi. In fact, I remember the first time I was in her apartment, her mother had just left to go to and move to Hawaii, and had given Linda a big box of her metaphysical spiritual books. And at the very top of that box, there was a book, a big blue book called A Course in Miracles. And I picked it up because it was big and thick, and I asked Linda if she knew what this book was. And she said no, but my mom did say to me once that if she was on a desert island and could only have one book with her, this would be the one. So I said, wow, well, let me take a look. I opened it up and probably read 2 or 3 paragraphs, and immediately I closed it. And I said, oh man, I don't know what this is trying to say. And I wasn't ready. Now, a few years later, I was ready, but at that moment at 22, I was not quite there. But there was another book that I remember reading around that same time that did touch me very, very deeply, probably because it's a story, and stories do resonate very deeply. We see ourselves in these stories, and I hope that you're going to see yourself in what I'm going to read here today. The book that I'm referring to is Siddhartha. I'm sure many of you have read Siddhartha before. It is a story of awakening. It is a story of one who gives himself completely to that experience which we are giving ourselves completely to here. It's the same thing. And a couple of nights ago, I was sitting in a restaurant reading from Siddhartha, and there was a very, very important lesson that came to me, and I think it's a very, very important lesson for all of us. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to read a little bit from Siddhartha. Maybe I'll break here now and then and talk about each section, but there's one particular lesson that I'm hoping that we will all gain. First of all, as we've been saying before, rather playfully, but very truthfully as well, that this is a PhD program that we are engaged in. We're not trying to get all of the little things, all the little stars and all the little accolades that we once sought when we were in grade school. I remember when I was in 2nd or 3rd grade, I correctly spelled the word Mississippi, Mississippi, and I got a gold star. And I was so proud of that gold star. Well, we're not here for little gold stars and accolades. We are in a PhD program, which means that we're seeking perfection, holiness, and divinity. Perfection, holiness, and divinity, only that. Not perfection from the ego's perspective, because that's nothing, that's impossible. But perfection from reality itself. Perfection, holiness, and divinity. So I think we're gonna hear that here in this section as well. So let me read a little bit. This part of the book comes after Siddhartha has given up everything. He was the son of a very rich man. He's gone off into the forest with his friend Govinda, and they live as ascetics for a while, but then they leave everything because they hear of a new teacher that is in a different part of India that is called the Buddha. And so they go to seek out the Buddha and to hear his teachings. And Govinda, his friend, is so moved that for the first time in his life, he leaves his best friend, Siddhartha, and decides to live with and to learn from the Buddha, the illustrious one. But Siddhartha has a very different experience. So this comes from the conversation that Siddhartha has with the Buddha when he sees him in the forest right before leaving. So, you, O Buddha, have reached the highest goal which so many thousands of Brahmins and Brahmins' sons are striving to reach. You've done so by your own seeking, in your own way, through thought, through meditation, through knowledge, through enlightenment. You've learned nothing through teachings. Once again, you have learned nothing through teachings. And so I think, O illustrious one, that nobody finds salvation through teachings. To nobody, O illustrious one, can you communicate in words and teachings what happened to you in the hour of your enlightenment. The teachings of the enlightened Buddha embrace much. They teach much, how to live righteously, how to avoid evil. But there is one thing that is clear. Worthy instruction does not contain. There's one thing that's clear. Worthy instruction does not contain. It does not contain the secret of what the illustrious one himself experienced. He alone among hundreds of thousands. Once again, it does not contain the secret of what the illustrious one himself experienced. That is what I thought and realized when I heard your teachings. That is why I'm going on my own way, not to seek another and better doctrine, for I know that there is none, but to leave all doctrines and all teachers, and to reach my goal alone or die. So Siddhartha has come to a very, very important realization. And that realization is that there is no teaching or teacher that can give him the experience of wholeness and enlightenment. The Buddha himself is unable to give that which he has received through teachings, through words. It is only through a resolute decision that Siddhartha is making here at the end. He says that he will leave all doctrines and teachers in order to reach his goal or die. This is the determination. This is the PhD program. We're seeking only perfection, holiness, and divinity. Okay, that alone. Anything more than that is going to trick us into the idea that we are accomplishing something through the influence of a teaching, a teacher, or whatever it may be. We have to come, as we always say, with holy, empty hands unto God and leave the rest behind, which is what we're going to see here in a moment. So let me read a little bit more. If I were one of your followers, I fear that it would only be on the surface, that I would deceive myself, that I was at peace and had attained salvation, while in truth, the self would continue to live and grow, for it would have been transformed into your teachings, into my allegiance and love for you and for the community of the monks. Siddhartha reflected deeply as he went on his way. He realized that he was no longer a youth. He was now a man. He realized that something had left him, like old skin that a snake sheds. Something was no longer in him, something that had accompanied him right through his youth and was part of him. And this was the desire to have a teacher and to listen to teachings. It had left him. He had left the last teacher he had met, even he, the greatest and wisest teacher, the holiest, the Buddha. He had to leave him. Slowly, the thinker went on his way and asked himself, what is it that you wanted to learn from teachings and teachers? And although they taught you much, what is it that they could not teach you? And he thought it was the self with a capital S. It was the self, the character and nature that I wished to learn. I wanted to rid myself of the lower self, to conquer it, but I could not conquer it. I could only deceive it. This is important. I could only deceive it, could only fly from it, could only hide from it. Truly, nothing in this world has accompanied my thoughts as much as the self with a small s. This riddle that I live, the riddle that I live, do you see this? And that I am one and I am separated and different from everybody else. This is the riddle, that I am Siddhartha. And about nothing in this world do I know less than about myself, about Siddhartha. The thinker, Siddhartha, slowly going on his way, suddenly stood still, gripped by his thought, and another thought immediately rose from this one. And here it was. The reason why I do not know anything about myself, the reason why Siddhartha has remained alien and unknown to myself, is due to one thing, to one single thing. I was afraid of myself. I was fleeing from myself. I was trying to flee from myself. I wished to destroy myself, to get away from myself, in order to find in the unknown innermost the nucleus of all things, Atman, life, the divine, the absolute. But by doing so, by trying to flee from myself, I lost myself. Yes, he thought, breathing deeply. I will no longer try to escape Siddhartha. I will no longer devote my thoughts to Atman and the sorrows of the world. I will no longer mutilate and destroy myself in order to find a secret behind the ruins. I will learn from myself, be my own pupil. I will learn from myself the secret of Siddhartha. What a monumental point Siddhartha has arrived at. And maybe you've arrived at that same point. Maybe the influence of us joining together here, as we do almost every day, has lifted you to a perspective where you can finally see that trying to escape is not the answer. Trying to find someone who can give me what they have is not the answer. Trying to find a teaching or a book or something that will give me something that I think I don't already have is not the answer. It can serve a very important purpose, just as the Buddha served a very important purpose to Siddhartha and to all the other men and women who followed the Buddha, or any other teacher. But there comes a point where we have to stand alone and look deeply into our own hearts and to find and to love and to radiate the self. Now, this is what's important here in this moment, in this association, because there is an association here. We come together every day, almost every day, so that we can listen to that call within our own hearts, but so often articulated through me, articulated through Vicky, through Calico, through there's a few of us. I've always felt that it was very important to come at the truth, the single truth that only God, that only love is real, from different angles. So you may recognize that through me, and tomorrow you may recognize it through Vicky. But there's something that's very important, that you have to recognize it. You have to recognize that I have something that you're striving for. Okay, there's something that has happened in my mind that you want, something that has happened in Vicky's mind, in any mind. This is not to identify one such as me, but to recognize that you wouldn't be here otherwise. You wouldn't be coming back as much as you do. But here's the next important part, and this is where it usually falls apart. Usually what will happen is someone will recognize, well, this teacher has something that I want, so I'm staying with him. I'm staying with her. Or this book, let's take A Course in Miracles. This book has something that I want, so I'm staying with it. I'm not leaving it. I'm going to read this book and do these lessons year after year after year. But what does the Course itself say? It says, forget this course and come with wholly empty hands unto your God. And what I'm saying is forget me, forget Vicky, forget anyone who you still believe is outside you, who may be giving you some valuable insight. And as soon as you get that insight, here's my advice: leave me. Leave the idea that you need to have me or anyone else or any teacher or any teaching or any dogma, just as Siddhartha realized. Because otherwise, as he says to the Buddha, it will all be on the surface. It will be really myself with a small s playing the game. And you're not here to play the game anymore. You're here to ascend. You're here to rise. Once again, this is a PhD program: perfection, holiness, and divinity. Those are the only experiences that we are here, the only experiences that are worthy of you at this point. So yes, receive the gifts that you're being offered, whether it be through me, Vicky, Calico, Scott, when he sings, or anyone else that you meet. Receive their gift, but then don't dilly-dally. Don't hold there. Be like Siddhartha and stop attacking yourself, but learn from the self who you really are. And then everything else will fall into place naturally. So that's what Siddhartha learned, and that's what we're here to learn. I'm going to turn it over to Vicky now to share her perspective. Vicky, have you ever read Siddhartha before?
Oh, yes, Brother James, years ago, too. Yes, and I loved it, too. First thing it reminded me of, when Jesus said, if I don't leave, the Spirit cannot come, because he was saying everyone would keep looking to him, to the miracle worker, and not to the essence that miracles sprang from. And that when he was willing to step aside, then that space could be filled with listening for that presence that guided and directed him as it guides and directs us. And there are many paths and many times in our lives that many of us have been in situations where we have been guided to a teacher or a teaching, whatever book or whatever person that's been helpful. And one of the gifts has been at Namaste Village, whether I visited there or we're on Zoom every day together, is that there has been a coming to that point where there's not a longing for a teacher or a dependency on any one teaching, that recognition that they are all saying the same thing. And we have come, and I have come, to this place of just radical acceptance of today, of what is, radically accepting that everything is as it is. When Jesus said the kingdom is not over there, but it's all around you, you don't have eyes to see, to let those eyes in us be open, that what are our eyes that see, and what is the light of the kingdom that we are recognizing, and that we join together not because we're dependent on any one teaching or teacher, but that we join together in the recognition that we are the way, and that in our acceptance of ourselves and everything as it is, we are the light, and we allow that light to strengthen by our joining together and celebrating that recognition that we are that light, and there's no function that's needed other than to come together in recognition and in happiness and celebrate and love each other, appreciate the amount it takes for any one of us to come through this passage of looking past our own mistakes, looking past each other's mistakes, coming to a place where we've accepted forgiveness, that none of it mattered, that what mattered was never touched. The light in us was never affected. That to come to that place in ourselves is itself the spot of holiness. That spot of innocence is holiness. And when we come home together every day, we come together to strengthen, to stabilize, to rest, to abide, to appreciate, to enjoy that presence that we know that we are, and that we see in one another, and that we listen intently for within ourselves. And then we recognize it as we hear it through one another. That love has always been the answer, whether it's loving ourselves, loving the birds in the air, loving the one in front of us, that the presence and the power of love isn't something we do or get to, it's what we are. And celebrating it by seeing it and sharing it and listening intently. And especially, I'm more aware of that in a new environment. Listen for the prompts, follow them. The prompts come from our heart, our own being. Listen and follow them. That's what following the light is, following the light of Christ in ourselves, recognizing it everywhere, recognizing there is no spot God is not, and following the direction or often the redirection. When we're going in a certain way and there seems to be a curveball, that's a redirection for greater awareness and greater experience of peace, of love, of joy. The answer is in present joy, in presently radically being right where we are, opening up to it, seeing it in one another, and allowing the spirit to rise in our awareness, because we're not interfering anymore with all kinds of judgments, all kinds of assessments, good or bad, yes or no, right or wrong. The only judgment we use is true. What is true? Love is true. Things are either true or false. If they're full of fear or complicated, they're just not so, they're false. And when they're true, there's an abiding peace that envelops us as it extends through us, and we find ourselves enveloping whoever's around us. So that's kind of what I took from this morning. And I loved the story. And I'm not one to be big on stories, but just like Jesus used parables, these stories sparked me today. And I think they sparked us because they hit on what's common. That's what's common right now. That's Elsa, my son's daughter, who I should I'm trying to gently encourage her to celebrate without barking. Every time she sees someone at the window, she's barking away, wanting to jump and say hello, I guess. Anyway, thank you, brother.
Thank you, Vicki. Oh. Oh, come on.
Thank you.
Oh, okay, I'm back. I was gone for a second there. Thank you, Vicki. You know, you used the word abide and abiding several times. And that's what we're here for, is to abide in the presence, to abide in the sacred presence that is within us. And yes, teachers and teachings play a role, but so does setting them aside and abiding in the presence. So if you have any teacher who tries to hold you in that relationship, that's not what the Buddha did to Siddhartha. The Buddha bowed and let Siddhartha leave because he knew that he had come to a higher truth. He had graduated. He had entered his own PhD program where his whole focus became perfection, holiness, and divinity. Only that. And he knew that to give himself to another teacher, another teaching, would actually hold him back. So all we're saying to you is don't hold back. Don't look to anyone to give you something that you already have. This is already whole within you. There are many teachers out there who will gladly accept your allegiance, are very happy to be up on the pedestal and to remain there because there's a need within them. But let the need within you be simply to rise in grace, to abide in the presence. Learn what you can from whatever teacher is in front of you, and then leave them as Siddhartha left the Buddha. Enter back into that holy stream, jump back into that mighty river, and let the current take you, because that's the only thing that's left for you to do. Let the current utterly take you. And I promise it knows where it's going. It knows the direction to the infinite ocean of grace. You may not know, but the current does. So don't just listen to the guy or the woman standing at the shore telling you what to do. Just jump in. The current knows where to take you. So I just realized that in the last couple of weeks, last couple of sessions actually, we did not share our opening prayer. So we can share it instead as our closing prayer. So taking all of this to heart, really feeling the impact of Siddhartha's decision to seek the kingdom within, we make the same choice. So I'm going to go ahead and put this up on the screen. Then we will share this together. 1 second. Okay, here we go. My soul has but one goal, to awaken to the truth that is forever true. My heart has but one desire, to remember the passion of infinite bliss. My mind has but one focus, to embrace the reality that is forever real. I choose to awaken now to the infinite love that is my source. I give everything to this love, just as it has given everything to me. I am awake now. Now, everyone go ahead and unmute, all of you in Zoom. Unmute, you guys at Namaste Village, go ahead and unmute, because I want to hear your answer to this. So everybody unmuted? Here we go. How is everyone today?
Awake.
How feels everyone today?
Awake and ready.
You are ready indeed. So let's step forward into the light. Just as this little picture of the Buddha here, step into the light and let the light take you completely. We love you. Have an amazing day.
Love you.
Namaste.
Thanks, Vicky.
Namaste.
Thank you.
Love you.
Keep them laughing.